16. Attention and vigilance. There are several different kinds of attention. The kind that is most familiar to us, of course, is the sustained mental application we have to use in order to do our work properly, listen to a lecture, or read a book. But there is another kind of attention. Call it self-observation or introspection, if you like, which consists of being aware at every instant of what is going on within oneself in order to recognize the currents, desires, and thoughts that go through one. It is this kind of attention that is still not sufficiently developed. This is why, when you have a problem to solve or something important to understand, your brain is tired and clouded, and you achieve nothing. If your brain is to be constantly lucid and ready for work, you must be attentive, prudent, economical, and moderate in all your activities. Otherwise, even if truth itself appeared before your eyes, you would still understand nothing. It is only by keeping your mental faculties constantly alert and on guard that you will be capable of dealing reasonably and intelligently with every situation as it arises. A person who is not vigilant, who closes his eyes, is exposed to every possible danger. There is nothing worse than to go through life with one's eyes closed. You must keep your eyes open so as to know at every instant what your inner state of consciousness is. Only those who keep their eyes open possesses the intelligence of the inner life and can no longer fall a prey to every alien force or entity. The thing is so obvious. Someone who is asleep can always be taken by surprise. From now on, therefore, remember this constant inner attention that will enable you to know exactly what is going on inside you. Of course, it takes practice and a daily examination of conscience in the evening is not enough. At every moment of the day, you should be able to recognize the desires, thoughts, and feelings that fill your mind, know their true nature and where they come from, and, if necessary, arm yourself against them or repair any damage they may have done. When a disaster occurs in the ordinary way of life, we see how firemen or soldiers immediately come to the rescue to put out a fire, repair bridges, clear the roads, rescue the injured, and so on. People find it perfectly natural to repair physical damage immediately, but when it comes to the inner world, they don't know what to do. They look on without reacting as the destruction continues. No, you must look into yourself and see what needs to be repaired 5, 10, 20 times a day, and not leave it until later. Otherwise, when later comes, it will be too late. You will have already fallen to pieces and been wiped out. 17. Stick to one spiritual path. If you want to do any serious spiritual work, you must stick to one philosophy, one system, and go into it in depth. For the psychic organism reacts in exactly the same way as the physical organism. If you make it swallow too many different kinds of food, it gets indigestion and falls ill. What can you possibly do with a hodgepodge of Egyptian, Hindu, Tibetan, African, Chinese, Hebrew, and Aztec traditions. It is not as though your mental structure were strong enough to know how to navigate in the midst of all that. Many of you are barely able to form a clear idea of a single philosophical system. So what can you hope to gain by reading and studying everything? It can only go to your head. And then, of course, everybody says that it is spirituality that drives people out of their mind. But it is not the fault of spirituality if people insist on treating it like a fair in which they can sample all kinds of exotic attractions, even such dangerous attractions as drugs, black magic, and unbridled sexuality. It is time you understood that true spirituality means that you yourself become the living expression of the divine teaching you follow. 18. Practice is more important than theory. Try to grasp the fundamental difference between spiritual and intellectual work. Let's say that I give you an orange. Your intellect enables you to acquire a lot of information about that orange, its shape and weight and color, where and when it was grown, its particular properties, and the chemical elements it contains, the different ways it can be used, and even its symbolic significance. In initiatic school, you will learn none of that, but you will learn the one thing that is essential. You will learn to taste it. This is what spiritual work is. Not to store up masses of theoretical information, but to eat, to taste the orange. That is to say, to gain practical experience, applied knowledge. This is more difficult than theoretical knowledge. It requires an effort. But it is the only way to transform oneself. Of course, no one can deny that it is interesting and even useful to learn about the attempts that human beings have been making for hundreds and thousands of years to pierce the mysteries of the universe and approach the Godhead. But it is not enough, since the one concern of all these religions and philosophical systems is the splendor, the divinization, the perfecting of man. We must make an effort to achieve that ideal. Don't imitate the ridiculous behavior of those who flock to highbrow lectures about the wisdom and science of the initiates of the past, without realizing how small, petty, and weak they are, and how incapable of giving a reasonable direction to their own lives. That is not spirituality. 19. Moral qualities are more valuable than talent. Everybody admires the man or woman who manifests an outstanding talent for art, science, or sport. They are not interested in knowing whether he or she is kind, just, honest, or generous. Talent is the only thing that people really appreciate and try to cultivate. This is why the world today is full of people who are remarkably gifted and talented. But why are all these gifts and talents and skills unable to save the world? Because that is not what is needed. If Providence has given you the talent to be a poet, musician, physicist, economist, or swimming champion, and you have cultivated that talent, that is magnificent. But what really matters is to live according to the divine laws, that is to say, to work every day of your life to acquire greater wisdom, greater integrity, and generosity, and greater self-mastery. The world needs people who are capable of manifesting moral qualities far more than it needs artists, scientists, athletes, etc. Take care, therefore, not to let yourself be too impressed by gifted, talented people, and never make it your ideal to be like them. Your ideal must be the highest possible, to come a little closer to perfection every day. And perfection is to be like the sun, luminous, warm, and vivifying, so as to awaken, enlighten, stimulate, and fecundate all creatures. 20. Be contented with your lot, and discontented with yourself. There are different ways of being contented. The first way is that of animals. They are satisfied with their lot, because they have no perception of their limitations and no reason to try to progress beyond them. This mentality is normal for animals, but it is not good for human beings, although, in fact, many of them are quite satisfied with it. Another way of being content with one's lot is what we might call acceptance. A person understands that the trials he has to endure are the consequence of his past errors, so he puts up with them. But he does not stop there. He knows that he has to make an effort to atone for his mistakes and make good his deficiencies. And this is the way of wisdom, to accept one's lot as the consequence of faults committed in previous incarnations, but never to be satisfied with one's present degree of evolution, always to strive to make progress. A sentiment of dissatisfaction with yourself, therefore, can be a stimulus that drives you to do better. But there must be another element to counterbalance this dissatisfaction, otherwise it can become a destructive obsession, and that element is your satisfaction with others. It is this that will save you from being too negative and giving way to discouragement. Look for the good and the beauty in all human beings, particularly in those who have contributed by their genius and their virtues to the evolution of mankind. In this way, you will always have something to admire and be in no danger of falling into despair.